But at the end of the day, Daddy and Mommy are not divorcing. They told us as children, we'll be together for at least a year. I can't promise you more than that. I can't tell you we're going to grow old together. But I can tell you that for 1 year, we're getting back together. And if you are a New York Metropolitan baseball fan on this Thursday afternoon, a fresh 15 or 16 hours after you got the news last night that Pete Alonso is returning to the New York Mets on a 2-year deal with an opt-out after year 1, you have to be excited. If you're not excited, I think something's wrong with you because this is best for business.
Well, it's best for both sides of the business. That's what it comes down to. Yeah. At some point, this did become inevitable. It was just a matter of when. We had our predictions on when Pete Alonso would sign. I thought it would be much earlier than this. You actually thought it would be much later than this.
That's right. And we'll check in on those predictions later on in the show. We're going to hold all of ourselves accountable.
But ultimately, without any other teams save the Blue Jays, theoretically, I think, allegedly, I believe,
right.
in the mix, he was going to sign with the Mets. It was just a matter of what the number was going to be and how long it was going to take, and really, who was going to give personally first, because that's what it felt like got this thing over the edge.
Yeah, I think
was Pete coming back, and then Steve Cohen and David Stearns meeting him down in Tampa.
I think you're very rational. I think Tommy, to his credit, was very rational during this process. But sometimes when you have this public squirrel, and this was a public squirrel, you start to fear that it's going to end badly. You start to fear that this isn't going to work out. And what was so frustrating to me is that it was so obvious that Pete Alonso was better off being a New York Met, and the New York Mets were better off with Pete Alonso. And so this, you can call it inevitable. I totally understand that. I raised my hand and tell you, I went back and forth on it. There were times in which I was like, don't worry, it's just a public fight. Then there were times in which I'm like, he's gone. This isn't going to happen. The Mets are saying, we're not paying you more than this. And Boris is asking for that. So I freely admit to you that over the last 4 months, things got kind of dirty. Things got a little, I don't know how it's going to end. But for any Met fan, I'm going to do you a favor. If you are a Met fan right now in your car, if you're a Met fan listening on the free Odyssey app, if you're a Met fan in a different country listening on the app, if you're a Met fan down in Florida or California, I want you to close your eyes as long as you're not driving. If you're driving, keep your eyes open. I want you to close your eyes. If you had any hesitation about if this was the right move or not, I want you to listen to something. I want you to put your body back to the way you felt in early October on that Thursday night in Milwaukee when the Mets season was about to end. I want you to think about how you felt when the season was about to end. I want you to think about how you felt when Pete Alonso dropped the pop-up. I want you to think about how you felt when Alonso came up facing Devin Williams. And then I want every single freaking person to listen very, very carefully and feel it. Feel it one more time.
3-1 to Alonso. Williams sets. Here's the pitch. Swinging a fly ball to right field. Pretty well hit. Frelick back at the wall. He jumps. It's gone. He did it. He did it. Pete Alonso with the most memorable home run of his career. Pumps his fist as he rounds second. It's a 3-run homer. He's given the Mets a 3-2 lead. They all pour out of the dugout. Alonso on his way to home plate. They're waiting for him. He hits the plate. He is first congratulated by Nimmo. Hugged by Lindor. There are a dozen Mets waiting for him outside the dugout. Pete Alonso keeps this fairy tale season going with the fairy tale swing of his career. 3-2 New York.
You don't want that back? You weren't sure? You're not sure if he can handle the pressure? You're not sure if he can deal with playing on another 1-year deal, pretty much a 1-year deal with an opt-out? You're not sure if you wanted that back? This is a no-brainer. This is not a 7-year contract. It's not a 5-year contract. It's not a 10-year contract. We're not talking about Pete Alonso growing old. We're talking about this season. And this season, that guy, the guy who saved the Mets' asses on that Thursday night, he's walking through that door. So to me, this is a celebratory day. Doesn't mean the Mets are winning the World Series. Doesn't mean they're winning the division. Obviously, it's the offseason. But in terms of what this means for the franchise this season, this is a no-brainer. This is an exciting day. You should be pumped up, and we should be happy that Steve Cohen said, you know what? I'll pay the dopey tax. I'll negotiate against myself. I'll just make sure that that baseball player is the first baseman. Not Brett Beatty, not Ronnie Mauricio, not Ryan Mountcastle, not Spencer Torkelson, not Rondé Barber, but yes, Peter Jefferson, Aloysius Johnson Martinez, Alonso. So, Tiki, I don't know if you could tell. I'm pumped up, bro.
Of course you're pumped up because you wanted Pete back all along. And yes, Steve Cohen did give a little bit because with $30 million in his 2-year contract in the first year, 24 in the second, obviously, it makes him the highest AAV first baseman in baseball, but it's only for a year.
That's fine.
And so it's giving in and rewarding, I guess, moments like that you just showed, but also just trying to convince Pete to save some face and come back.
I think that's a very good point.
Right?
Yes.
Pete didn't get what he wanted. Pete wanted long-term security. I think any baseball player, and it's so different than other sports because, I mean, hell, in basketball, you get paid just for breathing. Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy Butler says what's up.
Right, but think about it in the NFL.
Yeah.
When you get your first chance for a contract, if you've earned it, if you've deserved it, like you're getting paid and it's going to be money, life-changing money. And it happens pretty quickly. 4 years if you're not in the first round. If you're in the first round, maybe they take the fifth-year option, so maybe it's 5 years. In baseball, you can get drafted, be in the minors for 2 years, get to Major League Baseball, you got arbitration for 6 years. Like, it takes forever to get paid in baseball. And unfortunately, a lot of these guys are in their 30s. And when you finally get there, especially if you're a star like Pete is, he's not a superstar, but a star like Pete is, you want to be paid. You want to be compensated. You want to give family security so you don't have to think about working when you're done. And he didn't really get that. He did get $30 million a year this year.
Yeah.
And he's coming back to the Mets, and it could be a magical run just like it was a year ago. But to me, if I'm Pete, this feels bittersweet to me. It's great because I'm back.
Right.
I mean, the sweet's probably a lot more savory. Like, I feel it a little bit more. There's got to be a little bit of bitterness about it.
Well, I
think I wanted 5 to 7 years.
Absolutely.
And I got 2.
Pete went into free agency believing he was going to get a bigger contract than what the Mets offered him 2 years ago. He thought he was going to get $200 million. You even said it.
Yep.
Scott Boras was whispering that into his ear. Sometimes free agency is a net negative. Sometimes it's a loss. And he lost. But ultimately, he's getting $30 million this upcoming season, 10 of it via signing bonus, which I think helps him via tax purposes as someone who resides down in the great state of Florida.
Right.
So he's getting a great annual average salary this year. He'll get a chance to get back into free agency a year from now, and we'll see what happens. And I got to tell you about next year and the year after and lifelong Met. If you've listened to us talk about this, I have kind of stopped talking about lifelong Met because I knew the handwriting was on the wall that he wasn't getting that lifetime contract. He wasn't signing an 8-year deal.
No.
So I knew if he was coming back, it was going to be short term and we'd get him this season and then there'd be questions about 26 and 27. Well, here's what I say to any Met fan who's worried about that or doesn't want him back or does want him back. Well, worry about that in 2026. It's not a worry today. This was about this season.
Yeah.
You said last year was an evaluation season. You said it over and over again. And David Stearns evaluated. There was some pretty damn good evaluations. And the Mets ended up having a far better season than most of us thought. They got to the NLCS, right?
Yes.
This season is not an evaluation season. This is a win season. This is about going out, kicking ass, and trying to repeat your performance from a year ago. Well, how do you do that? Well, you go out and you add the brilliant Juan Soto. That's a big part of it. And you go out and you retain one of the most reliable sluggers in baseball despite his last 3-year decline. So this, to me, over the last month or two, has been all about how can the Mets be the best they can be in 2025, not making Pete Alonso Ed Kranepool. Not, hey, I want him to hit 500 home runs as a Met. Like, sure, I'd love that stuff.
Yeah.
But The reality, this was just about, can the Mets make the right move to put the cherry on top to what's been a great offseason? And they did it.
Right. I think what you're saying, and you're right about this, because it's easy to write the larger tome, the larger story with Pete Alonso and say, I want him to eclipse 500 home runs as a Met. And I can't wait till that day happens 7 years from now, 8 years, whatever it is.
Right.
I can't wait for that. But I don't think that Steve Cohen, David Stearns is now as his president, are thinking like that. I don't think that's in their – it's not their DNA to think about the story of an individual. It's in their DNA to think about the story of a championship Mets team. And so the reason I think you're so excited is because that's being written right now.
Yes, they have a better chance to win a championship today than they did yesterday.
Right. The short story is being written, not the, hey, Pete Alonso, 10-year, or 11-year, 12-year, how many years he plays, story with the Mets. They're not interested in writing that.
Right.
They're interested in writing a one-year story. And that one-year story needs to culminate in a championship, or at least the getting close to a championship.
So when free agency began, in my opinion, and there were some Met fans who disagreed, my opinion was the dream offseason was stealing Juan Soto away. It happened to be the Yankees, but it didn't matter if he was still in Washington or in San Diego. He's a brilliant baseball player.
Acquiring Juan Soto. To me, it was not about the Yankees. It was the brilliant baseball player.
I wanted Juan Soto, and I wanted to keep Pete Alonso. I did not think, with all due respect, that Willie Adames was a better option. I didn't think Alex Bregman was a better option. I didn't think Paul Goldschmidt was a better option. I didn't think trading a treasure trove of prospects for a guy who's not even available in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was a better option. And by the way, listen carefully. That's not me saying Pete's better than Vlad. That's me saying that was not the best option.
Right. You'll get Vlad next year.
By the way, I'll get to that because maybe. I thought, from a baseball standpoint, the best option for the New York Mets in 2025 was retaining Pete Alonso. 1 year from now, when we're sitting here talking about the next offseason, my opinion may be different.
Right.
Because guess what? Vlad Guerrero Jr. is a free agent. Kyle Tucker is a free agent. There are other options. So we'll talk about it then. Maybe, just maybe, despite what I did with my beard, maybe I sit here as an honest Met fan and say, thank you, Pete, for your service. I want to move on.
Yeah.
But not this time.
By the way, can we talk about the beard real quick?
Of course.
As an aside.
Of course.
You did nothing with your beard to help Pete sign back with the Mets recently. Can we just throw it away?
Well, I'm glad you said that, Tiki. Tommy Lugauer had this idea, and I concur it's a great idea. We both agreed that when Pete Alonso either stays or leaves, there would be a ceremony.
Yes.
And later today, let's say 5:30. 5:30 a good time, Tommy?
Sounds good.
At 5:30, we are going to have a very special on-air hair follicle ceremony for Pete Alonso. And I'll tell you exactly how it's going to work, okay? Tiki and Sean will provide the play-by-play, sort of, as they will be broadcasting live here from the WFAN studios. Tommy and I will commandeer the men's bathroom.
Portal potty.
We will shut it down for just 5 minutes. We'll make sure no one uses it. And Tommy will join me in the men's bathroom, where I will, very politely, while Tommy reads a beautiful speech, drop my beard hairs from a year ago into the toilet, and then we will flush it as a thank you, as a Pete is back, and as a moment of remembrance. So Tommy has written a speech. I don't know if he did it himself or AI. I have no idea. But Tommy has a speech. I have the hair follicles in my office, of course, from the beard I grew a year ago. And there will be a ceremony later today at 5:30.
I cannot wait for that. I can't wait for your speech, Tommy. I'm really looking forward to it.
As am I. It's going to be great.
Right.
Now,
got to write it in the next 2 hours.
do we have to send out an email because we can't have anybody actually in the bathroom taking care of business? We got a ceremony here, so people, if you're on like a little bit of a routine in the bathroom, if you know what I mean.
Well, I've got
set it a little earlier because 5:30. We're just going to need our peace and quiet.
I've got great news. I love our company. I love our radio station. Nobody's here.
Nobody's
today.
here.
At
You're
5:30, nobody's here. And if we need Yusuf, we'll get Yusuf to put the thing on the
Exactly.
the
Like
caution tape.
The caution tape.
They're cleaning and no one's allowed in.
Right.
But today was an icy day in the area. In fact, my kids had school canceled.
After hours.
Nobody's here. And as Tiki said at 5:30, everybody already is done for the day. So that is the safest time to have this beautiful, we'll call it my beard hair follicle ceremony in honor of Pete Alonso returning. Now, I admit, when I started growing that beard, that was over a year and a half ago now, I hoped it was going to be a long-term deal. I mean, I don't hide that. Like, I had hoped that this was going to be a long-term marriage for a lot of the reasons we talked about. But as time goes on, and Pete did not have the greatest year last year, despite his heroics in the postseason, I'd be the first to admit it. And then we saw the market, and obviously we look ahead to next year's free agency. I was obviously okay with bringing him back on a short-term deal. I see the benefit to it.
Yeah,
So while, yes, a year and a half ago, I was growing that beard with the hope it was going to be a 7-year contract, things change. And I am still happy about the scenario. I'm happy with it. Like, I guess the disagreement I may have with Beningo and others is that while I love the idea of a lifelong Met, I do, I also love the idea of winning. And I want to make decisions on what gives the Mets the best chance to win. Bringing Pete Alonso back this season gives them the best chance to win.
Right, because there isn't a good alternative. Maybe Mark Vientos turns into a decent first baseman, but you got to worry about another young player, Brett Beatty, being your third baseman.
Right.
Because there's no external option that the Mets are currently pursuing. So it just becomes less certain. Not less good.
100%.
Just less certain.
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, could Brett Beatty have become a star? Sure, he's still going to get an opportunity. So I thought this was the Mets' best option before the offseason and certainly towards the end of the offseason. Next year, I don't know. It is certainly possible. We're out here in November, and I'm saying, boy, this is tough for me to say, but I think they have to move on from Pete. I want to sign Kyle Tucker and move Juan Soto to first base. I have no idea.
Can he?
Yes. Yeah, anything could happen. Bryce Harper already did it. But that's a year from now. In this moment, Pete Alonso is back. And I'll never forget the moment I found out. And I think there's a lot of Met fans that are going to have that. You're going to have that moment where you found out Pete Alonso was coming back. Maybe you were very excited over the Ranger win. And you're like, yeah, Rangers, right? Oh, Pete Alonso's back. Maybe you were one of a few people driving home from Barclays Center.
The Nets still in the league.
After the Nets got walloped by the Washington Wizards.
Hey, they finally got themselves back on track.
That's right. The tank is back. I had to go and make sure. Maybe you decided to put your phone down and just spend the night with your wife, like Sean Morash. Maybe you were in a swimming pool. I have no idea.
Ooh, a little hot tub action?
Maybe. Maybe. But we all have that moment. How did you feel? And how did you find out when Pete Alonso came back? So we'll get to your calls, whether it's about that, whether it's about Pete's return, whether it's about what's next. It is a happy, happy moment. We will address the L situation with our teammate Boomer Esiason, who, look.
He prematurely tried to take it off and dismiss it.
Yeah, Boomer did.
Away.
Boomer did two things that, I mean, honestly could get him in trouble with HR, but I would never have an issue with that.
Yeah.
Number one, he threatened to drop a deuce on my desk. I don't know if you heard that one. And secondly,
He came into our studio.
he interfered with the L.
And he handled our L.
That's right. There is an L hanging around Boomer Esiason's neck. Now, we are fair people. Obviously, based on his report, erroneous report from last week that Alonso was going to re-sign with the Mets on Friday, he was wrong.
I'm reporting it's the Admirals.
And so we hung an L around his neck. We will address the L situation. Should the L legally come off? Should the L stay? What should happen to the Boomer L? We will address it later on, I promise.